dear, oh dear, oh dear, it just gets worse and worse for English cricket at the moment. Talk about out of the frying pan and into the fire. We had the Lord's Test, which has been marred with a bad pitch. It really lasted for 2 days, right, if you take into account the weather breaks. And then in the early hours of Monday morning, Stokes and Atkinson have got into an altercation or a punch-up or something like that with a young Saracens rugby player at a private members club in Chelsea. And I tell you what, they must have been pissed, because if you haven't seen this guy they were fucking around with, he looks basically like a vending machine with arms and legs. He looks like a fucking block. He's a big Samoan rugby guy. His name is Tatua Awavar. He's 21. I mean, he looks about as old as Mako Vanapola. You would never think he's 21. But he is a unit. And it seems, reading between the lines, it seems to be, I don't know if Atkinson and Stokes have wound him up. He's swung a punch at them. It sounds like almost a bit of a comedy thing. They've ducked, and the England security detail, who's been chaperoning them, has got one in the face by the sounds of it, and came out injured. And, after what's happened in the winter, it's just, the noise around it all is massive at the moment. I'm seeing Stokes is actually considering resigning, which is incredible, I think, to me, because I don't know where we go from here. If he does, what are we going to give it to Harry Brook? I mean, Harry Brook got smashed up by a bouncer in New Zealand only a few months ago, and he seemed, from what I understand, the Stokes Atkinson thing, they weren't the aggressors, but it seems like Harry Brook was behaving a hell of a lot worse in New Zealand. Obviously, Root won't do it again. I mean, the next senior guy down from that is Duckett, who was off his rocker trying to wonder out where his Uber was in Noosa, right, on that video. So your guess is as good as mine. I don't want Stokes to go unless there's something more serious, and there is, been some quite bad behaviour. I don't see, if there's been a few words, it is what it is. Boys will be boys, and if it is the rugby player who swung the first punch, then it's not as bad as I think it's being made out to be. The thing seems to be the curfew and the breaking of the curfew. First of all, on curfews, I'm dead against curfews. These are grown adult men. They should be able to come up with a framework themselves and work out when isn't appropriate to be drinking. The thing is, at least the game had finished. The Harry Brook thing, that was a night before an England game, right? So again, you go back to Harry Brook being next captain. Absolutely not for me. That he's not ready to be a captain. At least the Stokes and Atkinson thing happened after the game. I wonder why, if the game's finished, why is the curfew still intact? I guess they would say if you're still staying at an England hotel or whatever, you're part of the group. But once the game's over, I think the guys should be able to go and do what they want within reason. Obviously, Stokes had Bristol in, 2017, 2018? You have to remember, he never got charged with anything in that incident. From my understanding, as I remember it, I think, did he not stop a homophobic attack happening? I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, that's what happened. So you would have thought he'd have come out some sort of hero, really, from the Bristol thing. But then you have the whole ongoing conversations about the drinking culture that England have, and obviously what happened in the winter and Noosa and all that sort of thing. And I don't think they have a drinking problem. I think they have a performance on the pitch and a not taking it seriously problem and not planning properly problem. And, Noosa in isolation, you need a break on a tour like that. And as I said, boys will be boys, and they need some downtime. They need to unwind. The problem with what happened in Australia and things was that we didn't have a fielding coach. We didn't have a batting coach. We didn't have any fucking warm-up games. The whole thing was just a farce. Then the way they played in the first 3 tests was appalling. They hadn't taken it seriously. Some of the batting, the bowling wasn't great. And to then go and get shit-faced for a few days, it looks extra bad. Look, if we were 2-1 up in that series at that point, or maybe it was 1-1 and nicely poised, you wouldn't have had the same scrutiny. I think, especially the Australian press could sense the wheels coming off, and they were following the guys around, and it was what it was. And also, another thing is, we have to remember the prevalence of cameras in modern society, in a way like how mobile phones have ruined, I think, a lot of society. Everything's recorded, right? There's no escaping. I have a chat with a mate. The best sporting documentary we've seen was Living with Lions, 97. So the Gus Scott drop goal one, right? And those guys had a great time. That was a great documentary. You got a really fantastic insight into how good a time. Yes, they worked very hard, but they played hard off the pitch as well. But that sort of thing, or that sort of tour wouldn't even get off the ground now. There would be so much intrusion and so many cameras. So I do have a little bit of sympathy from the players from that point of view. I think the problem is England have got bridges to rebuild, and we won the test against New Zealand. Personally, I didn't see too many changes in the way, not just the personnel, the way England played. I thought Emilio Gay was a real bright point, but apart from that, it was sort of same as, and we have seamers who can get wickets in our conditions, and we got on the better side of it. If you think about that match, if Ravindra would have caught Brook and then Duckett, because Duckett was hardly got going in the second innings, that could have been a very different game. It was fine margins. And I didn't really seem to be too much to be cheered about. But they won, and then I think there's a lot of relief, and obviously Stokes has gone out, had a few beers, and what's happened has happened. Now, say he has done something more serious, and he was at the forefront of it, then, yeah, maybe we have a serious question to answer here. If, as has been reported, they were not the aggressors, and it's got a little bit out of hand, I'd like to see the situation brought to a relatively calm end. We live in quite a hysterical society, right? If you go back to Sandpapergate, that was only a few years ago. And look, I'm no fan of the Aussies and what they did there, but the reaction, the punishment those guys got was unprecedented. It got way blown over into all this conversation about a toxic environment, all this bullshit in the Australian cricket team. And then you had Darren Lehman. I mean, Darren Lehman had been brought in to be the antidote to Mickey Arthur. The general public wanted that team to be more Australian-like. Well, yeah, I mean, Darren Lehman delivered, right? You could definitely argue that. But then, once it all went tits up, just the reaction was for those guys to be banned for a year was just crazy. And I think some of the reaction towards Stokes again is going a bit too far. I'm sure I'd be surprised if Stokes and Atkinson are involved in the next game. Of course, this does bring up fucking Jofra Archer, the mercenary. It's just even more chance of him coming back in, which has been an absolute disgrace. That'll be the next thing that will blow up, and that will be rightfully so. If he gets brought back after the absolute disdain he's shown towards playing for England, much less even bothering to try and play a game for Sussex, then that's going to be the next big story, right? And it's one after the next, on it rumbles. And here is where I think the problem is. The problem for me is Rob Key. Everything, filters down from your leadership, right? Everything is downstream of the way the group is being led. And I just think Key is completely out of his depth here. We had the Silverwood, and then Giles went in sort of 21, 22, whenever it was. Key came in. He made the McCullum appointment, which was very left field. And look, the first bit of Bazball was fantastic, and generally it's been entertaining. I think that's kind of papered over the cracks, right? They've got away with being entertaining, and then, as the rest of the world have caught up, the results have started to deteriorate, and then obviously the Ashes tour was an absolute shambles. For Rob Key to oversee a tour with no warm-up games, no proper coaching staff. Jimmy Anderson had been axed a while ago for that tour when he would have still been a great option. It was just an absolute shambles. And then I rewatched some of his interviews about the drinking culture and some other stuff, and just the way he was dressed once in a hoodie and he was in a gilet. Again, I go up thinking, how would Alex Stewart have been dressed in that if that was him? Not that I think it would have happened or got to this point if somebody like Alex Stewart was running the show, but he would have been suited and booted, smart, England crest on, and he would have answered these questions properly. I think he's far too laid back. He's sort of let them, we get on with the boys and they can go to the IPL and they can come back when they want, they can do what they want. And that shows, whether it shows in Bethel and Archer and the disdain that they have. They've played on big, big contracts and they think they can do what they like and come back when they like. Yeah, down to the way the guys behave, the way the tour was planned, the way it unfolded, the way they spoke about the ex-professionals being has-beens. I think if there's somebody proper in charge running the ship, this wouldn't happen. You wouldn't need to have a curfew because there would be a proper discussion and the players would have respect for whoever's in charge. And there would be almost some unwritten rules, right? And they would just get on with things as grown men. But I just don't see it. For me, Rob Key has to go. He has to go immediately. I would want to see him go every day of the week before Ben Stokes. I think if we lose, Ben Stokes was the one guy out there in Australia who actually adjusted his method and took it seriously, and McCullum and Key just didn't do that. So I think we desperately need to hang on to him. Harry Brook's not ready for me, if he ever will be. Harry Brook plays for Harry Brook. You know, being a leader means you put the team first, you sacrifice. And Harry Brook's batting over the winter. He doesn't give two fucks about the team. He wants to go out, play his shots, do his thing. He's not interested in the situation. He's not interested in even seeing off one spell. 6 or 7 overs of Mitchell Stark. No, he's just going to go and go and go and do his thing. We just cannot have him as captain, in my opinion. The story's going to run and run. I think, obviously the media have got massive hold of it. I think there'll be more questions about the general, the culture. Is it toxic? The culture, all this sort of thing. I can just see where this is going to go, and it's going to put so much scrutiny on the England team, on the game, on the rest of the series. With New Zealand, if I'm the Aussies now, I'm absolutely lapping this up. I think it's fantastic. I think they've seen what happened over the winter. We've kept all the pieces in place from the fuck up from the winter. We're not doing anything different. So if I was Australia and I'd seen, we brought in Alex Stewart, say we could have got Gary Kirsten as test match coach, I'd be thinking, shit, these guys are getting serious again. And they're getting ready for 2027. If I'm the Aussies now, I think England are a fucking laughing stock, and it's all over the shop. And I think it will only get worse. Who knows what's going to happen next? I have a terrible feeling in my gut that Ben Stokes is going to resign. Where would that leave England? Where would that leave him? Because his batting's fallen off a cliff. He's obviously, for me, he's indispensable as a leader. There's nobody else that even comes close to be able to lead that team the way Ben Stokes does. But his batting's fallen off a cliff. His fitness is a bit iffy. I presume he'll probably get a match ban at some point, same as Atkinson. So, where does that leave him coming back? Can he justify his place coming back as just a player who will play instead of him? It's hard to think of somebody who can come in and give England that balance and bat at 6 or 7. Maybe a Sam Curran, somebody like that. But Sam Curran's a big step down from Ben Stokes, even though he's struggling with his batting at the moment. And then you'd have, a fresh captain in an absolute shitstorm with the media and all the questions and everything's going on. It's going to be really fascinating to see what happens next week. As I said, the Archer thing is going to be a big point of discussion. I'll be fucking furious if he gets picked after the way he's behaved and the amount of money he's taken out of the game for doing fuck all for about 4.5 years at one point. So we'll see what next week brings. It's going to be fascinating. Yeah, please let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Are you worried? Would you get rid of Stokes? Would you keep him? If so, well, if you get rid of him, who would you bring in his place? Now that I am interested to hear. Look, loads to come. Massive week coming up for England. I'll speak to you soon.